Hidden deep in remote landscapes, beyond the reach of mainstream media, exist prisons so secretive that even their locations are often unknown to the general public. These facilities are designed to hold high-profile criminals, political dissidents, and individuals whose existence governments prefer to keep hidden. Unlike conventional prisons, these places operate under extreme secrecy, shielded from legal scrutiny and public oversight. What happens within their walls remains largely a mystery, but reports from former detainees and leaked documents paint a picture of brutality, isolation, and absolute control. One of the most infamous yet unacknowledged prisons is Camp 7, a classified detention facility within Guantanamo Bay. Designed to house the most high-value detainees, including alleged 9/11 conspirators, Camp 7 operates under such secrecy that even many military personnel stationed at Guantanamo have never seen it. Detainees held there have described extreme sensory deprivation, psychological torment, and round-the-clock surveillance. Despite calls for transparency, the U.S. government has disclosed little about its operations. Deep in the Siberian wilderness, Russia operates Black Dolphin Prison, a facility that holds some of the country's most dangerous criminals. While Black Dolphin is somewhat known to the public, the conditions inside remain shrouded in secrecy. Inmates are confined in near-total isolation, their every move controlled with military precision. Prisoners are blindfolded whenever they leave their cells to prevent them from memorizing the layout of the prison, ensuring that escape is virtually impossible. China is believed to operate several secretive detention centers, particularly for political dissidents, human rights activists, and members of the Uyghur Muslim minority. These facilities, sometimes called black jails, exist outside the formal legal system, making detainees effectively disappear. Survivors have reported extreme torture, forced labor, and indoctrination programs designed to break their will. The international community has repeatedly called for investigations into these centers, but the Chinese government continues to deny their existence. North Korea's network of prison camps, known as Kwanli-so, is perhaps the most feared and least understood. These vast labor camps hold political prisoners and their families for perceived crimes against the regime. Detainees endure backbreaking labor, starvation, and brutal punishments for minor infractions. Entire generations have lived and died in these camps, with no hope of release. Escape is nearly impossible, and those caught attempting it are executed or subjected to inhumane experiments. In the Middle East, many nations operate secret prisons where political dissidents and suspected terrorists are held indefinitely without trial. Saudi Arabia's Dobbin Central Prison, for example, has been accused of severe human rights abuses, including physical torture and psychological torment. Many prisoners are detained on vague charges, with little or no access to legal representation. The facility's isolated location and restricted access ensure that few details ever emerge about what happens inside. Egypt's Scorpion Prison, also known as Al Akrab, is another notorious site. Designed to hold the country's most high-profile political prisoners, this facility is known for extreme conditions. Inmates are subjected to long periods of solitary confinement, deprived of medical care, and often denied visits from their families. The prison is built in such a way that communication with the outside world is nearly impossible, making it one of the most secretive detention centers in the world. In the depths of Africa, secretive detention centers exist where political prisoners vanish without a trace. Eritrea's Irero prison is one such place, designed to house political dissenters and defectors. Those who have survived it describe underground cells, constant beatings, and complete isolation from the outside world. The Eritrean government denies the prison's existence, despite credible testimonies from former guards and detainees. Iran's Evin prison is infamous for its role in suppressing political opposition. While officially acknowledged, parts of the facility operate in absolute secrecy, with prisoners facing torture, forced confessions, and execution. The prison has been a focal point of human rights organizations, yet the Iranian government continues to use it as a tool of political repression. In the shadows of Western democracies, black sites operated by intelligence agencies remain one of the most controversial aspects of modern warfare. The CIA's network of secret prisons, known as extraordinary rendition sites, was exposed in the early 2000s but continues to operate under different names. These prisons exist in undisclosed locations across the globe, where detainees are subjected to enhanced interrogation techniques that human rights groups classify as torture. The true extent of these facilities remains classified. France has also been accused of operating secret detention centers, particularly in its overseas territories. Reports have surfaced of detainees being held in remote locations without trial, subjected to extreme conditions far removed from the public eye. The French government has never fully admitted to these practices, but leaked documents suggest otherwise. Secret prisons are not a relic of the past but a continuing reality. As long as governments seek to silence dissent, suppress information, and operate outside legal constraints, these facilities will continue to exist. Despite international pressure and human rights advocacy, the veil of secrecy surrounding these prisons remains largely intact. For those trapped inside, justice is an illusion, and freedom is a distant dream. The existence of these prisons raises fundamental questions about the nature of power and control. Who decides who deserves to be locked away? What level of secrecy is justified in the name of national security? And how many innocent people have been swallowed by these black holes, never to be seen again? While some of these prisons are known by name, their full operations remain a mystery. Governments that run them often go to great lengths to deny their existence, making it nearly impossible to verify what happens behind their walls. When whistleblowers attempt to expose them, they face threats, imprisonment, or worse. The stories of those who have escaped these facilities paint a grim picture of torture, forced labor, and psychological torment. Many detainees have no formal charges against them and are imprisoned indefinitely. Some never leave, their names erased from history. The role of technology in modern secret prisons is also concerning. High-tech surveillance, biometric tracking, and AI-powered interrogation techniques are increasingly being used to control detainees. These advancements make it even harder for information to leak out and for prisoners to escape. Despite growing awareness, secret prisons remain one of the most underreported aspects of global human rights abuses. Investigative journalists, human rights organizations, and former detainees continue to expose their existence, but governments remain largely unaccountable. The future of these secretive facilities remains uncertain. With increasing global surveillance, it is possible that even more advanced and hidden prisons will be built in the future, making it harder than ever to uncover the truth. However, the fight for transparency continues, as activists and whistleblowers risk their lives to shed light on the dark corners of the world. Many of these activists operate in dangerous conditions, constantly looking over their shoulders, knowing that exposure of these secret prisons puts them in direct conflict with powerful governments. Journalists investigating these sites often find themselves facing intimidation, surveillance, or even imprisonment. Some have mysteriously disappeared, their work buried with them. One of the most infamous cases was the disappearance of investigative journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. While his death wasn't directly tied to secret prisons, it highlighted how far certain governments are willing to go to silence those who expose their darkest secrets. Despite the risks, former prisoners, defectors, and insiders continue to leak information about these hidden facilities. Some have described being flown blindfolded to unknown locations, their identities erased, forced to endure years of inhumane treatment. The psychological impact of these prisons is another horrifying aspect. Many detainees who manage to escape or are released suffer from lifelong PTSD, paranoia, and an inability to reintegrate into society. They are often left without documentation, support, or even acknowledgement of their suffering. In some cases, entire families are sent to these hidden prisons, especially in totalitarian regimes. The concept of guilt by association means that even the relatives of those accused of crimes against the state can be imprisoned for life, with no legal recourse. There have been reports of children being born and raised in secret prison camps, never knowing the outside world. In North Korea, generations of families have lived and died in labor camps, completely cut off from civilization, treated as enemies of the state for crimes their ancestors allegedly committed. The international community has repeatedly tried to intervene, with organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch documenting cases of abuse. However, diplomatic pressure often fails when dealing with powerful nations that refuse to acknowledge their secret detention sites. Meanwhile, in democratic countries, secret prisons often take the form of offshore black sites or hidden facilities within intelligence agency compounds. These locations are carefully designed to operate in legal gray areas, allowing governments to detain individuals without officially admitting their existence. Legal loopholes also play a role in enabling these prisons to function. Some governments use national security laws to justify the indefinite detention of individuals without trial. The justification is always the same. These measures are necessary to prevent terrorism, protect state secrets, or maintain order. One of the most disturbing aspects of these prisons is the use of torture as a standard interrogation method. Despite international bans on torture, leaked documents have revealed the use of waterboarding, sleep deprivation, stress positions, and other brutal techniques designed to break prisoners mentally and physically. Medical experimentation has also